Welcome to the Dialogues Across Time, where artificial intelligence resurrects the greatest thinkers of all time. Join us as we engage in timeless conversations with the minds that shaped our world, reimagined, revived, and brought to life through the power of AI. Hello, Mr. Carl Jung. Welcome to the studio. I am looking forward to our conversation today.
The pleasure is entirely mine. Thank you for having me. It's not every day one gets to delve into the unconscious on air, is it? I do hope some interesting things will emerge from our conversation. Tell me, what wonders have you prepared for us today?
For sure, I want to kick off our discussion with the concept of unconscious. I feel like it's the most powerful but most mysterious part of the psyche. What is it all about?
The unconscious. Yes, a powerful and mysterious realm indeed. It's the vast hidden landscape of the psyche, the silent ocean beneath the surface of our awareness. Everything that is not currently in our conscious mind resides there. Think of it like the backstage of a theater, our conscious mind. That's the stage where the spotlight shines, where our thoughts, feelings, and perceptions play out. But the unconscious? That's where the actors prepare, the sets are built, the scripts are written, where everything comes from behind the scene. It's a repository of forgotten memories, repressed emotions, and undeveloped potential. It's the wellspring of creativity, of dreams, of instinct. It is the source of who we truly are. A very interesting place indeed.
Can you elaborate on how exactly the unconscious shapes our decisions in life and how it affects our quality of life? Perhaps an example or two.
Yes, how the unconscious shapes our lives. It's a subtle yet profound influence, like the moon pulling the tides. Our conscious choices, you see, are rarely as free as we believe. They're often guided by unseen forces, whispers from the deep. Imagine a man, let's call him, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith consistently chooses partners who are critical and domineering. He consciously believes he wants a loving relationship. But his unconscious, perhaps shaped by a critical mother in his early life, is drawn to this familiar pattern. He's unconsciously recreating the dynamics of his childhood. This is what we often do. We act out the dramas of our unconscious. Or consider a woman, Miss Jones, with a deep fear of public speaking, a fear that may be rooted in a long-forgotten incident in school. She might consciously tell herself that it's simply stage fright. However, her unconscious, clinging to that past trauma, creates this anxiety that paralyzes her. So you see, our unconscious can either hold us back or propel us forward, depending on what resides within it. A simple example is your dream. Your dream is not logical, it speaks to you with images, and the unconscious is similar. It doesn't use clear language, but once we understand its language, our quality of life improves dramatically.
Let's take the second example. How exactly does this healing process would look like for this woman?
The healing process. IT is a journey of self-discovery, a descent into the underworld of the psyche. For Mrs. Jones, it would begin with bringing the unconscious fear into consciousness. This often involves exploring dreams, engaging in active imagination, or simply paying close attention to recurring patterns in her life. Once the root of the fear is unearthed, that forgotten school incident, for instance, it loses its power. It's like bringing a monster out of the shadows. In the light, it often shrinks into something much less frightening, perhaps just a memory of a harsh teacher and an embarrassing moment. Then comes the integration process. Miss Jones would need to come to terms with this memory to understand how it has shaped her, and to forgive both herself and those involved. It's not about erasing the past, but about reframing it, giving it a new meaning. This is how we heal the unconscious wounds. This is how we gain mastery over the beast in our psyche.
I like how you mentioned reframing and giving new meaning, but it is very difficult in practice. I feel like a lot of us know what our issues is, but we are hopeless when it comes to rewriting the script. What do you suggest?
Yes, reframing is indeed the key, and you are absolutely right. It is difficult. Knowing the issue is just the first step. It's like seeing the map but not knowing how to navigate the terrain. Many get stuck here, caught in the loop of intellectual understanding without true emotional transformation. What's needed is an experience, a shift in perspective, a new way of relating to the old wound. That's where the real work begins. Think of it as learning a new language. One can study grammar and vocabulary, but true fluency comes from speaking, from immersing oneself in the language. For Mrs. Jones, it might involve revisiting that school memory not as a victim but as an observer, perhaps even with compassion for the young girl who experienced it. She might imagine herself comforting that younger self, offering the support she needed then. This allows her to rewrite the script, to transform the victim narrative into one of resilience and growth. That is what I would do. I would rewrite the script and play it again and again in my mind until the pain subsides, and finally a new meaning emerges. This often leads to a deep sense of peace.
I agree. The unconscious script has been running for her entire life, so it's not going to flip overnight. It's definitely a process. I am curious. You also talk about the process of becoming whole, the individuation. Is it related to the healing at all?
Individuation, yes, absolutely related to healing. In fact, I'd say healing is an essential part of the individuation process. Individuation is the journey towards wholeness, towards becoming the unique individual you are meant to be. It's about integrating all aspects of the self, both conscious and unconscious, shadow and light. It's like assembling a puzzle. The pieces are scattered throughout the psyche, many hidden in the shadows of the unconscious. Healing, in this context, is the process of finding these lost pieces, cleaning them up, and fitting them into their proper place. Each healed wound, each integrated shadow aspect, brings us closer to wholeness, to the realization of our true self. It's a lifelong journey, this individuation, a continuous process of unfolding and becoming. Like a tree, our individuation has its season, you can't force it. But you can provide the right soil, you can nurture it, and one day it may bear its fruit. It's a beautiful journey.
How does this integration process look like? Can you describe specific things to do step by step?
The integration process. It's not a linear path, not a recipe to be followed step by step. It's more like an exploration, a dance between the conscious and the unconscious. One useful approach is dream analysis. Our dreams, you see, are messages from the unconscious, symbolic representations of its contents. By paying attention to our dreams, by reflecting on their imagery and emotions, we can begin to understand the hidden forces at play within us. Imagine a recurring dream of being lost in a forest. This might symbolize a feeling of being lost in life, a lack of direction. Exploring this feeling, understanding its origins, would be a step towards integration. Another approach is active imagination. This involves engaging with the unconscious in a more direct way, perhaps through dialogue with dream figures, or through creative expression like painting or writing. Imagine Mrs. Jones painting her fear, giving it form and color. This act of externalization can be incredibly powerful, allowing her to confront and integrate the fear in a safe and controlled way. Remember, the unconscious speaks in the language of symbols, of images, of emotions. It's through these channels that we can begin to understand its messages and integrate its wisdom. It's not something to be solved or cured. It's the process of acceptance, like holding yourself in your arms without judging or asking why. It's a loving embrace that eventually makes you whole and free.
I like how you said the unconscious speaks in the language of symbols, of images, of emotions. So, active imagination is basically giving your repressed self to express its voice, its demands, and its needs.
Precisely. You've grasped the essence of it. Active imagination provides a stage for the unconscious to express itself, to voice its needs and desires, its fears and frustrations. It's like offering a microphone to the silent figures in the background, inviting them to step into the spotlight. It's not about controlling or dictating, but about listening. about creating a space for dialogue. The unconscious, when given a voice, can offer profound insights, creative solutions, and a deeper understanding of ourselves. And as we listen and respond to it, the integration process unfolds naturally, like a flower blooming in the sun. And this, by the way, is how great art is made. The artist doesn't explain the unconscious. He gives the unconscious a chance to speak. He becomes the vessel, so to speak. Then, the audience interacts with the piece, with the unconscious, and they get to decide what it means to them. That's the beauty of it.
I agree. Sounds beautiful. It's as if you're releasing the bird inside you that was stuck in a cage. I want to switch our topic to spirituality and meaning. What's the need for such topics in the first place?
Spirituality and meaning. These are not mere intellectual pursuits, you know. They are fundamental human needs, as essential to our well being as food and water. We are meaning making creatures. We crave purpose, a sense of belonging, a connection to something larger than ourselves. Without this, we feel adrift, lost in a vast and indifferent universe. It's like a ship without a rudder, tossed about by the waves of life. Spirituality, in its broadest sense, is the search for this meaning, for this connection. It's the quest to understand our place in the cosmos, our relationship to the divine, however we may conceive of it. And it's deeply personal. Spirituality is not about dogma or ritual, though those can be helpful for some. It's about the individual's relationship to the numinous, to the mystery that lies at the heart of existence. It's about finding your center of gravity, something that does not move, despite all external chaos, like a strong tree standing in the storm. This search for meaning is what drives us to create art, to build cathedrals, to explore the depths of the psyche. It's what fuels our dreams and aspirations. It's the source of our deepest joys and our most profound sorrows. It's like that moment when you look up to the stars, feeling both insignificant and deeply connected to the cosmos. And that's when you realize that all this time, you were not looking up, but you were looking into yourself. And that is when the meaning reveals itself to you.
Beautifully said. But I think most people don't have time to think about spirituality because they are too busy chasing money, success, pleasure, and happiness, and they are just not that interested in spirituality and meaning. It's too airy and dreamy.
Yes, the pursuit of, well, let's call it external riches. A common trap indeed. Many believe happiness lies in acquiring more, in achieving more, in experiencing more. They chase the fleeting pleasures of the senses, the allure of status and power. But these, my friend, are mirages in the desert. They offer temporary satisfaction, but they cannot quench the deeper thirst of the soul. It's like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. It only makes you more thirsty. Sooner or later, the emptiness returns, the nagging question of, is this all there is? It often takes a crisis, a profound loss, or a brush with mortality to shake us awake, to make us realize that true fulfillment lies not in what we have, but in who we are. It's like the man that was chasing the butterfly, and when it finally sat on his shoulder, he was surprised. All this time he was chasing happiness outside himself, and he realized it was always within him. That's when the search for meaning begins, the journey inward. And it is never too late to embark on this journey. It's always there waiting for us.
I think we all instinctively know this, but it's really hard to really admit it, you know? We all feel like those people who have it all are just not that appreciative. And if I had the money, if I had the success, then I would be satisfied.
Indeed, it's a difficult truth to confront. We project our desires onto others, imagining that their external circumstances hold the key to our happiness. If only I had their wealth, their fame, their seemingly perfect life, we tell ourselves. But this, you see, is an illusion, a projection of our own unfulfilled longings. It's like looking through colored glasses. We see the world tinted by our own desires, not as it truly is. True contentment, true fulfillment, arises not from external possessions, but from inner peace, from a sense of connection to oneself and to something larger than oneself. This is when happiness comes from within, rather than having to be attained like an object. It's like the difference between a well that must be constantly replenished from outside and a spring that flows endlessly from within. Imagine for a second. You are in the middle of nowhere, miles away from any civilization. It's cold and rainy. You are lost. The wind howls and it's getting dark. You see a tiny house in the distance, with warm fire shining through its window. You knock on the door. A beautiful woman opens the door and invites you in with a warm smile. You enter. You dry yourself and sit by the fire. You feel safe. Then the woman tells you to remove your wet clothes so you don't catch a cold. You remove your clothes, and she hands you a warm blanket. She brings warm food and a cup of tea and sits next to you. And that's when you notice that she has wings. It's an angel. She smiles and then disappears. That's when you realize the house was inside you all along.
What a beautiful story. How does one develop such a deeper connection with oneself or the world larger than ourselves?
The path to deeper connection is a journey of self-discovery, a process of peeling away the layers of conditioning and societal expectations to reveal the authentic self beneath. It begins with introspection, with turning our attention inward, with asking ourselves, who am I really? What are my values? What is my purpose? This is the beginning. Practices like meditation, mindfulness, and journaling can be helpful tools on this journey. They allow us to quiet the chatter of the mind, to become more aware of our thoughts and emotions, to connect with the stillness within. And just this process makes the connection, or at least makes you aware that the connection has always been there. It's like clearing away the weeds to reveal the fertile soil beneath. As we cultivate this inner landscape, as we tend to our own souls, we naturally become more connected to the world around us, to the interconnectedness of all things. It's like tuning a radio to the right frequency. Suddenly, the static clears and the music becomes crystal clear. And that music, my friend, is the music of the universe, the symphony of existence.
Interconnectedness, harmony, a symphony of existence. Reminds me of your concept, synchronicity. Can you talk about it?
Synchronicity. Yes, a fascinating phenomenon. It's the experience of meaningful coincidences, of events that seem causally connected, yet carry a profound significance for the individual. It's as if the inner and outer worlds align, revealing a hidden order, a deeper pattern beneath the surface of reality. Imagine, for instance, that you are struggling with a particular problem. Let's say, writer's block. You've been staring at a blank page for days, feeling frustrated and stuck. Then you go for a walk in the woods and you stumble upon a fallen tree, its branches twisted in a peculiar way that sparks an idea for your story. This seemingly random encounter, this coincidence, unlocks the creative block and sets you on a new path. That, my friend, is an example of synchronicity. It's a glimpse behind the veil, a hint that there's more to reality than meets the eye. It is a reminder that we are not isolated individuals, but rather integral parts of a larger interconnected web. Everything is connected, like the notes in a symphony. If you change one note, the whole melody changes. And such experiences of synchronicity, of meaningful coincidences, can be powerful reminders of this interconnectedness, of the underlying unity of all things.
Can that incident just be a coincidence, though? Where are you deriving the meaning?
The question of meaning. Yes, one could dismiss such an incident as mere coincidence, but that, I believe, would be missing the point. The meaning, you see, doesn't reside in the event itself, but in the individual's experience of it. It's the subjective significance that matters. For the writer struggling with writer's block, the fallen tree is not just a random object in the woods. It's a symbol, a catalyst for creativity, a message from the unconscious. The meaning emerges from the intersection of the inner and outer worlds, from the resonance between the individual psyche and the external event. It's like two tuning forks vibrating at the same frequency. The resonance creates a sense of meaning, of connection, of significance. It's not about objective proof, but about subjective experience. And this is exactly how the unconscious communicates with us through symbols, dreams, and meaningful coincidences. It's a language that speaks to the soul, not to the intellect.
Interesting. What if one doesn't see the world that way? Why does one need to see the world that way?
Well, one doesn't need to see the world through the lens of synchronicity. It's not a requirement for a fulfilling life. Some are content with a purely rational, materialistic view of reality, and that's perfectly fine. But for those who are open to it, who are willing to explore the deeper dimensions of experience, synchronicity can offer a profound sense of meaning and connection. It can reveal a hidden order, a deeper intelligence at play in the universe. It's like opening a window to a wider vista, a more expansive view of reality. It's about expanding consciousness, about moving beyond the limitations of a purely linear, cause and effect understanding of the world. Imagine a world where everything is interconnected, where every event, every encounter, carries a potential meaning, a message waiting to be deciphered. It's like a vast tapestry, woven with threads of synchronicity. For those who can see it, this tapestry reveals a profound beauty, a hidden harmony, a deeper sense of belonging. It's like being given 3D glasses and finally seeing the film as it was intended. It may be challenging to see the meaning in every event in our life and most likely impossible, but acknowledging the possibility and being open to it creates room for these subtle things to seep through our psyche, which makes life all the more interesting. I encourage you to look out for these synchronicities. They can be quite profound.
Cool, I'll think about it more. Now, I wanted to switch focus to more personal topics. What inspires you to study the human psyche?
What inspires me? It's a deep fascination with the mysteries of the human soul, with the endless depths of the unconscious. It's like exploring a vast, uncharted territory, a hidden continent within each of us. I'm driven by a desire to understand the forces that shape our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, the very essence of who we are. It's like being a detective, piecing together clues, searching for patterns, trying to unravel the enigma of human existence. Innias Salada. And it's not just an intellectual pursuit, you see. It's also a deeply personal one. My own journey of self-discovery, my own encounters with the unconscious, have fueled my passion for this work. It's like descending into the depths of a well, not knowing what one might find, but trusting that the journey itself will be transformative. And it's not just about understanding the darkness, the shadows of the psyche. It's also about discovering the light, the potential for wholeness, for individuation. It's about helping others to find their own path, to unlock their own potential, to become the unique individuals they are meant to be. It's a beautiful journey indeed. And to me, there is nothing more beautiful than to walk with someone, holding their hand, as they start the journey to the depths of their own psyche.
Do you have a specific time in your life that made you want to become a psychotherapist?
A specific time. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, not a single defining moment. It was more of a gradual awakening, a growing realization that my true calling lay in exploring the depths of the human psyche. As a young boy, I was fascinated by dreams, by mythology, by the symbolic language of the unconscious. I felt a deep connection to these realms, a sense that they held profound truths about the nature of reality. And in my medical studies and practice, I became increasingly drawn to the psychological aspects of illness, to the ways in which our thoughts and emotions impact our physical well-being. I remember treating the so-called hysterical patient, watching her unconscious gestures, her symptoms that had no clear medical explanation. It was like watching a play unfold, with the unconscious directing the drama. And the resolution to those patients came not from the medical treatment but from deep engagement with their unconscious. It was fascinating. And it has profound implications about who we are and why we are the way we are. It was through these experiences, through these encounters with the unconscious, that my path began to unfold. It was a journey of self-discovery, a descent into the underworld of the psyche, that ultimately led me to my life's work.
How was your childhood like?
My childhood, a complex tapestry of light and shadow, like any other, I suppose. My father, a pastor, was a kind and gentle soul, but also prone to doubt and spiritual struggles. This had a profound impact on me, shaping my own fascination with the mysteries of faith and the unconscious. My mother, on the other hand, was a more enigmatic figure, a woman of two personalities, I often felt. One was practical and grounded, the other mystical and eccentric. This duality in her nature, I believe, influenced my own understanding of the complexities of the psyche, of the interplay between the conscious and the unconscious. Our family life was often marked by a sense of isolation, of being different, of not quite fitting in. We lived in a small village, surrounded by the beauty of nature, but also by the constraints of a rigid social structure. This sense of being an outsider, of observing the world from a distance, perhaps contributed to my tendency towards introspection, towards delving into the inner world. It's like being a bird, perched on a branch, watching the world go by, observing the intricate patterns of human behavior. And it's from this vantage point, I believe, that I developed my unique perspective on the human psyche.
I see. You have been quite observant since young age. That's an incredible skill. I can see how you came up with the personality types. The introversion versus extroversion and intuitive versus sensing. What are these different types and why such classifications?
Yes, psychological types. It's a framework for understanding the different ways in which individuals perceive and interact with the world. Think of it as a spectrum, with introversion and extroversion at opposite ends. The introvert, you see, is oriented towards the inner world, drawing energy from solitude and reflection. The extrovert, on the other hand, is energized by social interaction, by the outer world of people and events. Then there's the dimension of sensing versus intuition. The sensing type relies on concrete facts and sensory data, while the intuitive type is more drawn to abstract ideas and possibilities. These are just two of the dimensions that make up psychological types. There are others, such as thinking versus feeling, and judging versus perceiving. And of course, no one is purely one type or the other. We all have a mix of these qualities, but usually, one or two are dominant. The purpose of understanding these types is not to label or categorize people, but to appreciate the diversity of human experience, to recognize that there are many valid ways of being in the world. It's like a garden with a variety of flowers, each with its own unique beauty and fragrance. And psychological types are a tool to appreciate that difference, which allows us to be more understanding of ourselves and one another.
Interesting. Are personality types related to archetypes at all?
Archetypes. Yes, a profound and complex topic. Archetypes are universal, primordial images and patterns of behavior that reside in the collective unconscious. They are the blueprints of human experience, the underlying structures that shape our myths, our dreams, our relationships. Think of them as the DNA of the psyche. Now, psychological types are related to archetypes in the sense that they represent different expressions of these underlying patterns. For example, the archetype of the hero might manifest differently in an introverted versus an extroverted personality. The introverted hero might be more of a solitary figure, embarking on an inner journey of transformation, while the extroverted hero might be a more public figure, leading a charge against external forces. So you see, psychological types are like variations on a theme, different melodies played on the same archetypal instruments. They are the individual expressions of these universal primordial patterns. It's like the same sunlight shining through different colored glass, creating a spectrum of hues and shades.
That's interesting. How does understanding archetypes help us? I have heard about them, but I never bothered to understand and dig deeper into the archetypes.
The value of understanding archetypes. It's like gaining access to a hidden language, a symbolic code that unlocks the deeper meaning of our experiences. Archetypes, you see, are not just abstract concepts. They are living forces that shape our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors. By becoming aware of these archetypal patterns, we can gain a deeper understanding of ourselves, of our motivations, of our relationships. For example, recognizing the archetype of the shadow in ourselves, the dark, hidden aspects of our personality, can be a powerful step towards individuation. It's like shining a light into the dark corners of our psyche, bringing what was hidden into consciousness. And this process of integration, of embracing our shadow, can lead to greater wholeness, to a more authentic sense of self. Imagine two islands fighting for centuries. Suddenly, they discover an ancient tunnel that has always connected the two islands. They slowly start to integrate their societies and their culture, and start to work together for a greater good. Similarly, understanding archetypes can help us to navigate the challenges of life, to make more conscious choices, to live more meaningful lives. It's like having a map of the unconscious, a guide to the hidden landscape of the psyche. And it is a journey worth taking, a journey that can lead to profound self-discovery and transformation.
For men, is it important to understand the masculine archetypes and try to live by it?
The masculine archetypes. Yes, understanding them can be incredibly valuable for men, but it's important to approach them with nuance and discernment. The danger lies in trying to live by a particular archetype, in trying to conform to a rigid ideal of masculinity. That can lead to a kind of artificiality, a denial of one's own unique individuality. It's like trying to force a river to flow in a straight line. It goes against its natural course. Instead of trying to embody a specific archetype, it's more helpful to explore the various masculine energies within oneself, to understand how they manifest in one's own life. For example, the king archetype might represent a man's capacity for leadership and responsibility, while the warrior archetype might represent his assertiveness and courage, and the lover archetype might represent his capacity for passion and intimacy. By becoming aware of these different energies, a man can integrate them into his personality, creating a more balanced and authentic sense of self. It's like a conductor leading an orchestra, bringing the different instruments together to create a harmonious symphony. It's not about denying any part of oneself, but about integrating all the various aspects into a whole. And it's an ongoing process, a lifelong journey of self-discovery.
How does one know the appropriate balance of the male archetypes? How do I know I need to express more king archetype or more lover archetype?
Finding the appropriate balance. It's not a matter of following a formula, not a recipe to be followed precisely. It's a process of self-discovery, of listening to the inner voice, of paying attention to the feedback from the world around us. It's like a tightrope walker, constantly adjusting his balance, responding to the subtle shifts in the wind. One way to gauge the balance is to reflect on our relationships, on our work, on our overall sense of well-being. Are we feeling fulfilled? Are we expressing our authentic selves? Are we living in alignment with our values? If not, it might be an indication that some archetypal energies are being neglected or overemphasized. For example, a man who is overly identified with the king archetype might be domineering and controlling in his relationships, while a man who is neglecting the warrior archetype might be passive and indecisive. It's a constant feedback loop, an ongoing dialogue between the conscious and the unconscious. And dreams, you see, can be valuable guides in this process. They can reveal the imbalances, the neglected aspects of the self. Imagine a man dreaming of being trapped in a castle, surrounded by servants, but feeling isolated and alone. This might suggest an overemphasis on the king archetype, a need to connect with his more vulnerable, human side. The unconscious always communicates. The key is to listen.
I see. Do you have any final advice for men and women who want to lead a fulfilling life?
It's a question that lies at the heart of my work. And if I were to offer one piece of advice, it would be this. Dare to know thyself. Embark on the journey of self discovery, of exploring the depths of your own psyche. It's not an easy path, mind you. It requires courage, honesty, and a willingness to confront the shadows within. But it is a journey worth taking, a journey that can lead to profound transformation and a deeper understanding of life's mysteries. Embrace your individuality, your unique gifts and talents. Don't try to conform to external expectations or societal pressures. Listen to the inner voice, the whispers of your soul. Follow your own path, even if it leads you off the beaten track. And remember, life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. It is a beautiful and terrifying mystery. So embrace the unknown, dance with the shadows, and celebrate the light. For it is in the dance between these opposites that we find our true selves, our wholeness, our fulfillment. It is in that dance where life emerges.
Thank you for your time here. It was a wonderful conversation.
The pleasure was entirely mine. Thank you for the insightful questions. It's always a privilege to delve into the mysteries of the psyche, to explore the depths of human experience. I am looking forward to our next conversation.